So one interesting thing too is that John Reno, who I mentioned is the leader of the gang, he was the second born son, and he was the one doing time in Missouri. He got extradited back here and lived out his life peacefully, but he actually wrote a book about his life, like an autobiography with the help of some people. And it has been kind of interpreted and updated a couple times. And we do have we've gotten our hands on like a copy. It's on computer paper, but if anybody wants one, we'd be more than happy to run a copy.
Yeah.
And it's...
Who would have thought the term computer paper would date you?
yeah.
We actually have it on computer paper.
Computer paper.
That's from 19 something.
Right. I'm old soul. But, it's a interesting thing. It's kind of a tell-all. Some people have kind of questioned whether, it's a little bit exaggerated on certain things, but who knows. One other interesting thing about the Reno Gang is I mentioned the brother Clint, who was not involved in the gang at all. He ended up moving away. I think he passed away in, I want to say, Kansas or somewhere elsewhere. And his claim to fame is that Elvis Presley, the first role that Elvis played in a movie and the only secondary role that Elvis had was portraying Clint Reno in 1955's Love Me Tender. So it's not really based on historical accuracy.
Yeah.
It's an old war
Yeah.
kind of movie. But yeah, he portrayed Clint Reno.
Yeah.
And then there's another Reno movie that is a little bit more historically accurate called Rage at Dawn. I think that was in the 50s as well. You can find that on YouTube.
Okay.
So
How many times have you seen that?
I've watched as much as I could tolerate for, a little bit. But
You know what? It's crazy that this guy, Clint, was famous for not making bad choices. He did not nearly much else, but he just didn't do anything bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, some other fun things. Back in the day, this was really a big deal. Wilkinson Reno and his wife, the Reno Gang's mother, I can't remember her name at the moment off the top of my head, but they were divorced, which was kind of a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And they made the entire Reno family all day on Sunday. All they did was read the Bible and study the Bible. They go to church and read the Bible all day on Sunday. And so it didn't work, but that's something people find certainly compelling that, they did that strict religious upbringing and that seemed to have backfired, but quite
Was
interesting.
there any from historical documents or anything along those lines that gave indication of why they started robbing trains? Because that was a novel thing back then.
Yeah, I mean, they were the first to do it. I don't really know what led them to that. That might be in John Reno's book, but I'm not sure. And then one thing I guess I should point out too is that everybody is focused on this area. They actually terrorized the Midwest. So there was a time where they got into robbing treasurer's offices at local courthouses. And they did that in Iowa at some point. And they actually were captured then, at least two of them. And they escaped. They cut a hole out of the side of the jail and escaped on April 1st. Can't remember what year. And they actually allegedly wrote April Fools on the side of the wall as they left. Yeah, but it was really a big deal. So Frank Reno and Frank Sparks tried to make their way up to Canada to flee the country, and they were captured on the border in Michigan. And there was this really big fight between, not a big fight, but kind of a dust up between Canada and the United States and Britain. I think Canada at the time was British occupied. That they were willing to extradite them back to the United States so long as the United States wouldn't give them capital punishment. And so there was a kind of an international dust up, so to speak, about the Reno Gang, but all centered around us here.
Yeah. So one more question for you. You may not have the answer.
Sure.
I know from people who may not be familiar with the area, Rockford is just a little north of Seymour.
Yes.
Just a few minutes by car, longer by horse.
Right.
And so where did they live? Where was their homestead? Do you know? Is it still there? Are there remnants of it still there?
So that's the place at Chateau de Pique. So
that's where they lived.
Yeah, if you park in that parking lot, it's right up on the hill. You can still see kind of the foundation of the home, but it's no longer standing.
Okay.
Well, I do have a picture of their home at the visitor center. Anybody wants to kind of check that out. And we've got a couple binders.
We'll have that on the show.
Yeah, a couple binders full of stuff
Okay.
that's really neat. One thing that's in there that I find really interesting is back in the day, presidents would sign federal arrest warrants, and President Andrew Johnson signed an arrest warrant for the capture of the Reno Gang, which I kind of think is pretty cool.
Did they ever get to see that?
Yeah, I don't, probably not.
Like, wow, look at this. We got a really cool signature.
Yeah, and the Pinkerton guy is a really big deal too. The Pinkerton law enforcement agency is still around, and he was a prominent figure. You know, there's only like a handful of photos of Abraham Lincoln, and one of them, Alan Pinkerton, is standing right next to President Lincoln.
Wow.
So, and you've probably seen the photo.
I wonder what he was working on.
Yeah, right.
That's the real story.
A close advisor to Abraham Lincoln, right? So,
yeah, okay. I love it. Definitely love talking all these things. Your brain has an endless amount of knowledge of Seymour fun facts. And I actually am from here, and I did not know of any of this, including lore of chewing gum inventions and more.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the and more, but we might have to go back to the chewing gum part.
Yeah. So, and if you do want to read about some of these things,
you're not just making this stuff up.
Yeah, particularly the chewing gum thing. That's in John Lewis's book. Oddly enough, it's included in the Reno Gang, but it's a Reno Gang book, and it's other Seymour firsts that he details, and it's only $5. We've got it available at the visitor center, so come in. So we want to talk about the chewing gum.
Let's do it.
Let's go for it. So John's claim was that perhaps that chewing gum either was invented in Seymour or the first chewing gum factory was located in Seymour, and by my research with that, I believe that the factory would have been located around where Papa John's is in that area. Could be wrong on that, so somebody correct me, please, and help me out here. But Fitch's chewing gum factory. I'm trying to think exactly when it operated, but probably the later 1800s, early 1900s. And then the rumor always was too that either he had sold it off, or maybe he had passed away and his family sold it off, and then joined the board of directors at Wrigley Company, and proposed.
That's suspect.
Proposed a special recipe that he had developed, which then in turn people have revealed to be juicy fruit. So it was juicy fruit.
Wow, we might be starting a storm of some kind.
That's right. It might be causing controversy too.
I don't know.
People might.
Wrigley's people.
Maybe Wrigley. We'll get a cease and desist from Wrigley. I don't know.
I don't know. All right, juicy fruit talks, but so much more. Seymour has such a history.
Yeah.
So people listening in and around Southern Indiana may not have known. So what are the fun facts?
Yeah. So the inventor, I should have the name. Should have looked that up.
That's okay. This is totally off the cuff.
Yeah. So. The founder, the inventor of Barbasol shaving cream. Everybody, the blue and white can. From Seymour, Indiana, Shields High School graduate.
Okay.
Invented Barbasol.
Nice.
That's always an interesting one. And then once again, a guy who I should know his name. I think his first name is Robert, but anyway, he's from Seymour. Once again, maybe like a Shields High School graduate. I'm pretty sure he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest, most up-to-date diary in human history, and he would document pretty much every 5 minutes of his life.
Wow.
And he actually ended up having a stroke, and he couldn't write anymore, and his wife would continue it for him because he was really passionate about it. And then I think later in life I think he struggled with that for a couple of years and stopped documenting. But it was every 5 minutes.
And started living life.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Decades of his life documented. But and I think he passed away. I don't think he lived all his life in Seymour.
I think diaries are kind of like a lost art, not to segue.
Yeah.
But when my great-grandfather passed away, there were stacks of books, just, 3 and 4 feet high, of diaries. And he had one every year. And every day, he started the day and ended the day with a diary.
That's cool.
So he was a big Cincinnati Reds fan. So every single Reds score, the weather, what they planted, what they harvested, who came to visit, who they saw in town.
That's so cool.
It really is to sit there and read it. And these are all like 80s, 90s, that sort of thing. But it's, and it shouldn't be that far away, but I guess it is a long time ago.
You need to make a book out of it.
I do.
You need to write the book.
I don't know how you do that, but totally.
I did that with my grandma.
Okay.
That was like one of life's greatest blessings was my grandma was 89. She's turning 90, and she was joking with my sister one night saying, I want to write a book about my life. And my sister was like, well, why don't you ask Jordan? Because Jordan at the time I was working for the Tribune as a newspaper reporter. And so my sister texted me and said, go talk to her about writing a book. I was like, okay. So I go over there and she's like, I was just kidding. And I was like,
also learn.
Yeah. I was like, no, I think your story's worth telling. Why don't we do it? Okay. And so I just had her start writing down stories, and then I like interviewed her. And unfortunately, that started in the fall. And after Christmas, she had a really brief illness and passed away pretty quickly. And we didn't know about that. But when it was the Sunday before she passed away, I went over, it was a Saturday before, and I went over and I think I talked to her for like 10 hours.
Wow.
And then the next day I went back over there and I talked to her for like 8 hours. Wow. And, by the end of that, she's pretty tired because she was, dying. And my brother walked in the room on Sunday and she was like, oh, thank God. Like,
I don't have to talk about it anymore.
Get him away. But so I ended up, she of course passed away a week after her funeral. I started writing her story. It's from her. I'm a ghostwriter in it. She so it's from her, and it's exactly how she was, in her words. And we released the book on what would have been her 91st birthday.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. So you should do that with your grandfather's stuff.
Should. There's lots of
I don't know how you are with writing. I know you're good at radio.
Everybody has a story. I don't know. I'm a better talker. I would have done that 10 and 8 hours, no problem. I'm just saying.
That's right. That's right. But it's a cool thing to do, I every now and then I want to visit my grandma. I just pick up the book and read it. I can hear her voice.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, because
it's super special.
Yeah, and I've got all of her notes that she had written. I got her audio.
Okay. Well, someone else wanted to read the book about your grandma. Where can they find that? Is it published?
You can find it on Amazon.
Okay.
And then we have some copies at the Visitor Center.
That's awesome.
I'll give you gladly if you want one, if you're that interested. But it's My 90 Years by Wilma Richart.
Okay.
So,
that's so sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Any other Seymour lore we need to throw out there before we sign up?
I don't think so. At some time I should stop by again, though. We should talk about Meaty Shields, the founder of Seymour.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that'd be
we'll do that.
Cool.
Yeah. We'll be back right here.